My understanding from them is that there will always be choice on planet Earth. And it's not about a good and bad choice. It's not about the right and wrong choice. It's about how we handle that when it doesn't fit our perception or our belief or our truth. Like if we're cleaned up enough from our past history, if what's happening in front of us that we could put on that it's dark, or that that it's not really the light that we're resonating with. It's how do we perceive that?
Welcome to Conversation for the Soul. I'm Linda Christine. Today I talk with Darlene Van de Grift. And oh my gosh, I say this all the time, but this was such a good conversation. Darlene is a medical intuitive. She's a mediator and translator who assists in wisdom and guidance from what is called the Evolves Collective. We didn't even get into the medical intuitive stuff because there were so many other things that came up during this conversation. I mean, I have this huge list here of everything we discussed. So hold your socks, folks. This is going to be a great episode. And please remember, like, share, and subscribe. That is the way these beautiful humans get their stories out there for everybody else to hear and see and share in. And it is just wonderful. And I'm really anxious to hear what y'all think about this conversation with Darlene. Here we go. Welcome, Darlene. It's so wonderful to have you here today.
Yeah, it's been a while since we tried to connect, but we're good.
Yeah. It takes a while sometimes to get those schedules aligned. Yeah. So I want to start like I ask everybody that I have on here. How did you begin this expanded consciousness journey? What cracked you wide open, or was it multiple things?
I've always had an interest in the human body because I wasn't, my mother wasn't supposed to be pregnant with me. She stayed in the hospital 3 months after I was born. I was a twin, and I lost the twin early on. And so there's been that curiosity about that. But the multidimensional place really got cracked open. My mother was in a inner child workshop that she was in the first one, and I was going to be co-leader in the ones following, but they didn't want us together. So she had done a recording. There was a past life regression or a past regression that she wanted to figure out what was really going on. And when they recorded it, both the therapist and she said, we would really like you to listen to this, but don't listen to it with the kids, because my kids were all like 8 and under. I had 3 of them at the time. And I remember listening to the recording, and it was a place where she was abducted, or at least she was in her. I can't say she was taken on a ship, but she had 2 visitations that she was not able to move. And they were one being was on one side, one being was on the other side, and she couldn't move. And she was terrorized by that. And so this voice came up inside me that said, that was not us. It was not me. And it kept repeating it. And I'm like, I have no idea who this is or what that's about. So I did my own regression with a therapist, a week or so later. And what came out of that was a being called Eli Wazar. And he was one of my past lives, but he was also considered an ET. He was also considered a multidimensional being. And so that kind of opened me up for, I guess it was about 5 years that I channeled him, because he came in to complete a timeline with a group of people that I had just met that were about 2 hours away, which is actually where I live now. When this all cracked open, I was in Pennsylvania, and these people were coming in as clients probably within like 2 to 3 weeks before all of this happened. So it was really synchronistic of how it all came together. And eventually I moved up to the Catskills. I was told at age 40, when I was my birthday, when I woke up in the morning, they were like, and you're moving. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And then they were like, yeah, you're moving. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And I walked around for 3 days saying, no, I'm not. And then my mother said, because we had a business together, And she said, I think we need to move. And I'm like, oh, oh, okay. Confirmation, right? So, yeah.
Wow, wow. So did she go into the regression to find out about that twin that never made it through, or
No, she went into regression because this was like 15 years prior to, where she remembers losing time. She remembers going to bed, losing time, feeling that she couldn't move. There was something that was going on. And so the therapist took her back to that time to figure out what was going on. That same night, both of her dogs died side by side outside. And so it was just very peculiar for her to have an understanding of what was going on. Why did they both pass? One was an aged dog, but the other one was only like 3 or 4 years old, and they passed right. They were barking, that she remembers when she went to bed, and then they stopped, and then this event happened. So she was just curious about what that was, what happened that night.
So what's the bottom line of what happened? She was taken?
No, she wasn't taken. She was in her bed. She remembers clearly that there was one being on the one side and one on the other, and they were trying to do something with her carotid artery.
Ooh.
And she was terrorized by that. What I found out later with working with the multidimensionals, those that work with me, is they were trying to help her because they gave her another 20, or she lived another 20 some years past that, maybe even more. She was 86 when she passed. So that was probably when she was in her 50s. And they were trying to help her, but there was no way for them to communicate with her because she was so fearful. They couldn't, they don't speak. They would do more telepathy. They would more have her, anyone that would have them resonate with them to calm them, as opposed to, but she was so terrorized. But they did help. They did do what they needed to do. I never really found out what that was, but yeah.
Wow. And then you had a regression and found out that you are a multidimensional being.
Yeah. And I had I didn't even know what multidimensional was till years later. All I know is that this voice came through, and then Ellie came through, and he was working with a small group for a period of a few years till that timeline got replaced, or it got healed, because he needed to say whatever he needed to say to his people then. And then and at the same time, he was introducing me to the council. So from that time, for another 23 years, 25 years, there was a set council. I would go into the council room, which was an intergalactic teaching facility. And there would be 9 of them there. There'd be 9 on the council, but they would always leave 3 seats open for visitors because it was a teaching facility. And that was primarily who I worked with for 20 some years, until that shifted.
Okay, now when that happened, how did that look as from your human perspective?
The council, you mean, or
Yeah.
So the council room, so I would be taken to the council room. So in a meditation, or it didn't really happen to be like, it wasn't as formal as that. I'd be taking there at night. If I'd be working with a group, I'd open it up to the council room. It was more about this, and it was a process for me to even understand what this was. There was a curiosity about it, how to manage it, because I channeled Ellie Wazar. From that time, I didn't particularly care for channeling. I didn't like the energy coming through my body, and me feeling like I was not, for lack of better words, not in control of it. Like what was that coming through, and not being participating, like I couldn't ask questions. So when he was leaving, and he actually just moved into the council, what happened was he was done of his timeline. And so when he introduced me to the rest of the council members, I said, I'm not bringing in 9 beings, like I have no intention of doing that. Right. So could I do something else? And they said, you can do it as a multidimensional mediator, where I would go to the council room. I'm very visual, so they would show me what's in the council room. Then I would articulate that. Then this is what this one's saying. This is what that one's saying. Sometimes it was how to work with them together, because maybe they were showing me a timeline that they existed that had a discrepancy between the two of them. So how would you mediate us? What would you say? How would you connect to this one being in this, and how would you mediate so that we end up in a neutral field, within the council room? So it was a lot of training.
So the purpose of the council is for training, or does it serve other purposes as well?
So the council, as it evolved, okay, so through the years, it was a lot of training for me. It was a lot of healing of past lives. It was, I would say, mostly for me, but they worked with most of my clientele at that time as a medical intuitive, right? So they would come in. I not only see, but I'm auditory as well as kinesthetic. So however they would interrupt the session in some way to say this, do this, say this, and I'd be going, no, no, no. And then I'd have to do it. Because they just wouldn't leave me alone. So that was kind of the way that they interacted with me for those 20 some years. And then they evolved. So they became the evolves. And so that is more one voice. And that is still a mediation. But now we go to what's a place called the white space instead of the council room. And that's a place of co-creativity and neutrality. And their mission, which is part of the series of the 5 books that are in the process that I'm writing with a co-author, is that part of that process, or their mission to come in, is to clear humanity of their karma and their timelines and anything. Like they know that we've been, for thousands of years, been accumulating karma or timelines that are not complete. They're unfinished business. They're not aligned with, so we're very full of that, whether that's cellular level or spiritual, energetic level. And so they're coming in when I work with groups or clients, they come in to help remove or heal or integrate those timelines so that we are, one, more whole as being a multidimensional being, but we're also more open and spacious and expansive to take in the new information. Like, what do we want to co-create? They're big in that. Like, you're creators. What do you want to create? We can help you align with that. We can help you get that. We can give you ideas of how to do that. Okay, but you're the creator. We can't step in and do anything for you. We can assist you, but we can't do it.
Maybe you can answer this. What is, or have you learned, what is the overarching purpose of us being on this planet?
I think it's the same as what is out there. This is a in-depth journey into understanding who we really are. It's a place of endless possibilities. If we could tap into that, if we could know that we're not here by ourselves, we're not an individual, we are collective, we are one with everything that is on this planet. Like nature, everything is one with us. If we could understand that better and cooperate and not create division, even though division or polarity is important, we can circumvent that in some way by helping to neutralize conversations or division. We can be in the same place and disagree. We can agree to disagree, and it doesn't make that person bad or wrong or any of that. So that purpose in coming here is coming to that place. It's a part of an evolution, right? It's like a serious evolution, because we have so much that we have to handle in this one lifetime. We have to handle our physical body. We have to handle our genetics. We have to handle our past lives. We have to handle if there's something coming in for future. We have to keep our spiritual connection. It's very complicated. And so when you choose to come here, you have all of that you're trying to navigate in a way that maintains a stream of neutrality, and yet you speak your truth.
It's interesting. Most of us in this community are ADD, and it's no wonder with all the stuff we got to juggle.
Right. We get overloaded, and trying to pull those pieces together, it's overwhelming at times. But if you can, I think the neutrality is a huge piece. If you can aim for that in your conversations, in your relationships, and it doesn't take away from your sovereignty, and it doesn't take away from you speaking your truth. It's just that you don't have any attachment to expectations or outcome. You speak what you need to say and you let it go.
I have so many questions, but I want to circle back for a minute to one that I'm very curious about. You mentioned you were coming in with a twin.
Yes.
What happened to that twin? Why did they back out?
So my mother was not supposed to get pregnant for the third time. She had one kidney, and back in the 50s when I was born, now tells everybody my age.
I would have swore you were 29.
Oh, I love you. Yes. So she was told not to have any more children. And she got pregnant with me, and she hid me for 6 months. So nobody knew until she was well into her 6th month. And that was past the time. Then she was hospitalized because she couldn't eat anything. She was on bread and water. She had a horrible gallbladder. The kidney was not functioning well. And so I remembered my in utero experience. I remembered being like with my twin. We were fraternal twins. So it was another sister, but we were not in the same sack. And I remember that being like the first 3 months being like really joyful, right? Like it was, wow, that kind of, wow, I got somebody here. And then what happened was all of a sudden things changed and I couldn't move. I wasn't allowed to move because when I did move, the toxicity would get worse. So I was kind of felt like I was not supposed to move, and I couldn't really move because it made it much worse. My environment got much worse when I moved around a lot. And I think that was the place where there was a sacrifice on her part, whether that meant that she was not going to make it anyhow, or she was too small, or there was something about her physically that she chose to come in because it would have compromised both of us. So I worked on my in utero experience for 10 years. I mean, everything in my life started to focus, oh my goodness, that's what that's about. That's what that's about. That's why I thought my oldest was going to die when I was pregnant with him, because I thought, one, God was going to punish me and that he was going to die. He was never going to make it. I never read any books. I went to the doctors and stuff, but I had no thought that I was going to have a child. I thought he was not going to make it. And so all of that started to come in as far as that was my experience that I laid on my pregnancy.
That is so fascinating to me because I had what they term the invisible twin with my third pregnancy. I had my son, everything was normal. The water sac broke, went to the hospital, and they said, your water sac isn't broken. So they broke it for me. That was the first clue. The second clue was after labor and delivery, and they sent me home. I was taking a shower. Sorry, folks, TMI here. Thought I ripped my stitches because it felt fleshy.
Uh-huh.
It was a small placenta that came out. It was not a piece of the one that was for my son. So it was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And I always am curious if there's how could it not have an effect on him? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And clearly it had a big one on you. So that's why I'm curious about it.
Well, when I looked it up, the statistics back, was it 15 years ago when I was really looking this up, 7 out of 10 pregnancies are twins.
Wow.
And it doesn't mean that, and they usually leave within the first 6 weeks or longer, that you don't really even know that you had a twin. They might have a breakthrough bleeding, or it might get absorbed in the tissues, so I think it's more prevalent. And what that leaves with people, the birthing thing for me is huge, for that imprint of that first time of coming in and the impact that it takes on your life, for however you view things. People that are cesarean, I look at them and I ask, if they don't finish projects, are you cesarean? Because they don't know how to really do that. They're used to being taken out. They're used to being extracted. And so that piece of a twin is, you always are looking for somebody else. You always feel like something's missing, or that you're looking for that ideal partner. You're looking for someone that matches you. It's more of that, at least in my opinion and my experience in working with other people that have either known they've had twins, or it comes up that they thought that they were. It's a personality thing that can happen, because first you have it, and then it's your first loss, right? Yeah. It's your first real loss, and how is that handled? And if it's never addressed, it's a longing. It becomes a longing to have someone that close to you, or that resonates or gets you that much, that understands you, because that was what a twin would have been.
I also have another friend who was in utero with a twin, and she, through some modality, I'm not quite sure, I believe it might have been theta healing, she figured out that her twin left because she just got scared at the last minute and decided to back out. And my friend held so much resentment and so much anger that she was left alone.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
What an interesting thing. Well, and it sounds like something we should be investigating a little bit more, if there's that high of a percentage of people, having twins that get reabsorbed.
Yeah, because you don't, it'll show up in the work that I do. If that's the case, it'll go back to conception, or go back to something in the womb. And what was that? And I'll usually say, do you have any indication of what that might be? And they will usually bring it up. I thought that something was there, or I have this feeling that something's missing, and then we investigate it more. But I think that it's there. It's the first. And whether that is by divine, order of bringing another energy in that is not really supposed to come in with you. I thought about that. I've worked on that angle too. That is it an accompaniment for certain people, for that energy or that being or that soul level to come in, knowing that it didn't want to be here in the birthing experience. It's just coming there to make sure you arrive okay.
Wow. Fascinating. Thank you for that. Now let's dig into, we talked about your console that's now the Evolves. I'm curious what their viewpoint is, and yours, on the dark forces that are controlling the planet right now. We need the yin and the yang, the good and the bad. I get all of that. Is it just to be able to look at all of that with a neutral eye and not get triggered by it? Or is there something else going on here that's at play?
Part of it is that. I think a big part of that is, okay, so how are you going to react to this? How do you see it? My understanding from them is that there will always be choice on planet Earth. And it's not about a good and bad choice. It's not about the right and wrong choice. It's about how we handle that when it doesn't fit our perception or our belief or our truth, like if we're cleaned up enough from our past history, if what's happening in front of us that we could put on that it's dark, or that, that it's not really the light that we're resonating with, it's how do we perceive that? Do we judge them? Do we push them away? Do we come at them in a different way with love and acceptance? But that's not mine. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not mine, it's yours. But that doesn't mean that I can't see the other parts of you. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person. That just means, and if you look at it now, truthfully, those that we're seeing as dark, or some people say evil or whatever, you got to look at where they came from, one, and the history, their long life history. Did that promote this? Or are they in front of us for some reason, for us to stay neutral and aligned with light and not get pulled into something?
Yep, I see that. What about other planetary beings that are wreaking havoc, like reptilians and things like that?
Well, Elie Wazar was reptilian, which was a big shock for me. He was from Meldeck.
Like
And
everything, there's good and bad in everything. I mean, there's good people and bad people.
yeah,
Yeah.
despite their gender, their nationality, or any of that, there's, I can't use the word good and bad, but there's differences, right? There's differences with all beings, and it holds that polarity intact, right? So the reptilians, I mean, the Dracos, they're out there. I think that some of them. So in working with multidimensional beings, I also work with what they consider defectors. So those are like the reptilians that we have categorized as being the bad guys, that are leaving that want to leave that see a higher purpose, that want to help humanity. And they come in to be mediated with, so that you can understand their dynamics of what they want and what's changing, because they're in their, everything is in an evolutionary process, right? So it doesn't mean if you've been in the dark for thousands of years, doesn't mean that you're going to stay in the dark. You're going to, at some point, possibly move into more of having a bigger heart, having a deeper understanding, having more compassion, developing empathy. And you just move up the line with that. So you're going from that dark space that might be the abyss of what some people see, and you move into more of the light. So those, what we would consider the reptilians, are those that are on the darker side, or that want to create havoc or division. They have potential to come more into alignment, as being defectors. They're leaving what they've been judged about, and they want to do something different. They want to do something more. They want to participate at a different level that helps humanity, rather than leading humanity down the path of destruction.
Yeah, I learned that I have some Draco in me, but it's more from the dragon lineage, perhaps.
And they are related. Yeah.
So it's also fascinating. Now let's talk about the importance of neutrality, and how does one even begin to teach humanity this really difficult lesson
Of neutrality. It's a lot of deep breathing and a lot of acceptance and allowance. They've taught me 7 seeds. They call it 7 seeds of integrity, which leads to neutrality. So it's acceptance and allowance. And that means you can accept what's coming to you. You accept who you are. You accept who the other person is, right? The allowance can get a little tricky, so you can allow them to be exactly who they are, okay? Unless there is interference in your own sovereignty, and then there can be more of an action taken, but it's not an action of It can be an action of loving them anyhow. It could be an action of speaking up. It could be an action of separating and letting them go. But there's an action usually with at what determining factor is allowance. Like, how much are you going to allow? Where's your boundaries? Where's your commitment? The third one is commitment. That's the commitment to yourself. You know, how are you committed to you? How are for your well-being, for who you are becoming, for your sovereignty, you know, for all of that. That's a commitment place. And then there's trust. How do you trust yourself? It's not about trusting someone else. Many people don't trust their own decisions, right? So how do you become discerning? How do you trust yourself? How do you learn how to know when somebody else is not trustworthy so that your commitment to yourself is held intact? You know, speaking your truth is the next one. How do you stand firm in neutrality and speak your truth so that you're not engaged with the other person in the conflict? There's so many people out there that are just loving the conflict. Like, they just want an argument for whatever reason. You know, it could be how they were raised. It could be they just want to win, or they just like the energy of conflict. So how do you speak your truth but not get into the conflict? How do you stay that mindfully centered in your heart space and in your mind to just say, this is what I believe, and maybe not what you believe, and that's okay. You know, then the third one is the next one is the co-creative place. How do you co-create with spirit? How do you co-create with others to make a better world, to make a better life for yourself and your community and your family? You know, we're the only beings that really create. That isn't done through, you know, who we are, that we're learned how to do that because of that's the template that we were born in. But creativity is humanity's gift, that in the heart space. So when we become creative, more creative beings, and we become more neutral, we have more space to create, however that is. And that's not just paintings and writing and whatever. It's all the inventions that come from that place. They're pulling that information from the field. So if you're more connected, you're more open, you're more available, you will get more information about how to take care of your garden, or how to clean the water, or how to do this or that. You know, it's that creative space that is open. And then through all of that, then we hold better or more integrity. And that place of integrity is not just the moral integrity. It's not just what you say is true is true. It's not just about that. The integrity, and when I learned this, I was like, wow, that it's like the difference between an oak tree and a willow tree. Like right now, each one of us has a certain kind of physical integrity that we hold. Do we sway with the wind back and forth because we don't speak up for what we really want? Or do we hold on to what we really want and we just say, okay, whatever's going to come to me, let it come, and that's okay too, right? So our integrity is not just our energy and our belief systems. It's the integrity of our physical form and how we live our lives.
With all the crazy energies that are bombarding us right now, how do we stay in that place of neutrality? Like the other day, I'm usually pretty good at staying neutral and calm and just observing, but the other day something snapped in me and I just got into this emotional place, and me and the husband went at it. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting because this hasn't happened in a while. How do we navigate all that?
Sometimes you're going to get caught in the chaotic node, right? I mean, you're not going to be perfect in the space of maintaining neutrality 100% of the time. And some of those times it may feel good to be that expressive and not be, for some people, neutrality feels contained, right? It feels like I have to contain, I have to buckle down, I have to stay neutral. And that freedom to express in a bigger way, it's what you do after that, right? So do you hold the disconnect? Do you hold the anger? Do you hold all of that? Or can you come back in, take accountability? Yes, I could have done this differently. I could have spoke to you differently. No, I didn't do it this way. Whatever that element is of accountability for that automatically relieves whatever that was. Whether that other person is going to be accountable too, it's not about that. It's about you coming back into the resonance of accountability because you claimed, or resonance of neutrality because you claimed accountability.
I have a very stubborn soul, Darlene.
Yeah, that we tend to have those, don't we?
It's frustrating because I want to do the right thing, but then I'm like, damn it, why do I always have to be the one doing the right thing?
Yeah. And when you own your sovereignty, it's really all about each one of us anyhow, isn't it? The other person is just a reflection or a mirror or whatever, our teacher in that moment. And if we can remind ourselves of that, like for me, when I'm like, if I had a very busy flowing day, right? And at night, I don't feel like I have that connection because I'm too full. You just have to wait sometimes to come into the neutrality. Sometimes it just takes time to come into it. It's not something that you can create all the time to just go, oh, I'm going to go from this space to neutral. You have to learn how to navigate it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the power of creating. So, what do they do on other planets? Do they not have music like we have music? Do they not have art like we do? Do they not have magical inventions being made all the time? And what can we benefit when what is the benefit when we harness this creative energy and power that we have?
They are very creative. Sound is big for them, sound and light. And what we're bringing onto this planet is very big for them and how they function, and how for them it's their mana. It's that powerful for them, sound and light. So they create that as much as they can on whatever in the multidimensional level of those that have evolved past what we are, right? They bring that in as really a welcoming place of who they are and what helps them to resonate. It's part of the fabric of who they are. So creation for them, and it depends on if they're physical form, because not all multidimensional beings are physical form. So if they're in physical form and they are more evolved than we are, then yes, there's inventions out there, there's creativity out there. They do whatever they need to do to advance in their next evolution. They're not just sitting there saying, oh, I'm good. I'm good enough, right? They're moving forward in whatever way that is. So for our creativity, it's really about opening that space up to allow yourself to create in whatever way that is. Because when you take even a look at how creativity or writers or anything, artists, the starving artist, they're not given that permission or that value of who they are. And yet it is one of our deepest, most spiritual connected places, is to create, and it feeds the soul. So if you can express, maybe you're not a talker, but maybe you can write, or maybe you can paint, or maybe you can sing, or maybe you can, act or whatever, to just move that energy through you, and you become more whole-souled because of that creative energy. You're not blocked. For me, as a medical intuitive, like creativity is a huge piece of health. What are you going to do to move that energy through? There's so many things that you can do. Visualization is part of creativity. So, that you don't have to say, oh, well, I can't paint, I draw stick figures, or, I'm not a writer or whatever. Oh, no, you just sit down and you visualize, if nothing else, go and talk to somebody about what you would like to do or what you would like to see or whatever. That is still creativity.
Let's talk about that beautiful creative piece behind you. What was the inspiration for that?
That is the universe. So that's the black hole over here. And that's where a lot of things get sucked into. Like, that's what we know, gets sucked into that. This other section here is the Pleiades. And one of the beings that came in as the evolves is called the blue crystal. She is also the record keeper of humanity. And so she came through the Pleiades. She came through a nebulous of the Pleiades and was born and settled here, like was actually given to the earth, like implanted deep into the earth. And then this here was really a representation of the Merkaba before it comes together. So that is the male and the female and all the aspects that go along with that are on the outside, and the opening that we have in the center that provides that space for us to navigate both the masculine and feminine.
That is so beautiful. There's so much energy behind it, just looking at it.
Yeah, I really enjoy that painting. Is 4 by 6.
Wow.
Yeah. I love big paintings. My first painting that I painted when I was 13 was 4 feet by 28 feet, and it was around a pool.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's neat. So are you channeling these days, Darlene, or not so much? Because I'm just curious if you'd be open to doing anything right now.
The channeling, so on the podcast, we're in the end of the second season, and starting in 13, episode 13, we're doing more channeling, taking into the white space and working with, it's the frog and the ladders. The evolves brought in the image of the frog and climbing the ladder, and what is involved in climbing the spiritual resilience ladder. And, I was wondering where they were going with that. By the time there's 6 rungs, by the time you get to the 5th rung, it really blows it wide open. And I was like, oh, okay, now I get what you're doing. So channeling wouldn't be the word that I would use for me. I'm more of the mediator piece, but they keep telling me you need to be prepared. No idea what that means. So you need to be prepared. And there's been a voice that has come in the last week, and I was like, I don't know who you are. But my voice changes. So I guess that's a piece of channeling that they just kind of dropped in there. But yeah, I could go to the white space and the evolves if you give me a question.
Yeah, I'm curious about what do we need to be prepared for, and what's the best way to go about preparing?
Okay, so let me take that question in, okay?
Okay.
So they would say being prepared for everything but expectation of nothing, because that is that place of neutrality. So being prepared for the openness, being prepared for the creativity, being prepared for what is offered to you on a daily basis that you can interact with. Because your process of what all humanity is going through is trying to dialogue with what is coming towards them so that they can stay centered. That centered place is your work, our work in that place of neutrality, of staying centered so that we can co-create, so that we can co-create with you, so that we can co-create together, so that humanity can align themselves with what is coming towards them. So I'm asking them, what is coming towards us, anything that we need to know. So they're saying there's a gift. There's gifts that will come, continually coming. They have been coming towards you for the last 30 some years. They will continue to come through and focus in the concept of what is humanity, what is this nodule that we are going through in our evolutionary state. in order to transform into a more whole-souled, open-hearted, and yet mindfully connected to everything that is around us. That is our evolutionary process. But in doing that, the preparation work really right now is in this great divide that they call it, is to separate from what has been, what no longer serves you, what is diminished, what is not in alignment with the light of where we're being headed. And in that way, there is more connection, there's more togetherness, there's a piece of where the evolution takes humanity, the majority of humanity, into this other nodule that some people are calling it the fifth dimension. They do not view it as the fifth dimension. They view it as more of your evolutionary process, because they do not divide dimensions up. They are just one stream of consciousness that we become more and more and more conscious of ourselves and of others and of oneness and of spiritual connection.
Thank you for that.
Go ahead.
What, may I ask one more question?
Yes.
What would be the single most important thing that we should be focusing on right now?
You're saying to not get distracted in the environment of what is around you that is going to bombard your energy field, but for you to stay centered in what you need to do for you to stay healthy, to stay vibrant. Neutrality is a piece of that, but it's more about bringing your energy level up to not be distracted in what is coming towards you. How do you hold your integrity, your vessel? How do you hold that as you navigate and you walk through life? That is the more valuable thing. In fact, they're saying that the physical piece of your health is more important now, because there's been so much that has happened in the last 3 to 5 years that have impacted humanity's resilience, that it's important to keep that as clear and as clean as possible. They've been bringing up water and the integrity of water and what water does for all of us. And so staying hydrated with clear, clean, pure water, refreshing ourselves with that. Not only that, but looking deeper into the consciousness of water is important in the alignment of health and well-being. And so they're physical, they're saying, we have been told to, it starts with each one of you, and that is true in the essence of starting with each one of us. It is now more important to take care of the physical form, because without the physical form, many of you are leaving. Many of you have gathered so much negativity in your life that you are leaving through disease and illness in some way. And so we need you here, and this physical form needs to be valued and get nourished and taken into consideration of keeping yourself here. That's how they would answer that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Is there anything coming up that we should hold some awareness around?
They're saying, as you already have experienced in the last several years, that there is no institution that is on your planet that will hold steady to its original form, that they will all collapse in some way to be reinvented. That is part of the co-creativity, is the leadership that evolves not only within each individual, but the leadership in a co-creative process that will start to emerge. So the preparation, the understanding, the value of the collapse of the structures that have been in place for so many years is so valuable to the evolution, because most of those structures will no longer serve you in where you are going. they need to change. They need to be reorganized. And it's not to prepare for the negative that is happening around you. It's prepare for the light that will be happening around you. It's for you to understand that these light particles that are all around you in that dark places that you see, that light will become brighter, that light will lead you into a more whole place of how communities and families and organizations that will start to arise from that will take care of more of the planetary needs, that will take care of Earth, that will take care of the children, that is coming, that is actually here. It's a wave that is moving through all of you. It depends on how you perceive it and how you align with it and how you flow with it.
Thank you so much for that. Who are we speaking with that we may thank and show gratitude to for this beautiful message?
They identify themselves as the evolves.
Okay.
They are a group of multidimensional beings that come from many planetary space, that live on this planet as well, that though you cannot see us, that we are here.
All right. Well, we thank you, Evolves, for being here today.
Thank you.
How do you feel after that?
Well, that was interesting.
That last part was, for me, so powerful, because I feel like a lot of times we can really get caught up in the minutia of the collapse of everything, and it gets a little scary sometimes. But the way they put it was so perfect. Focus on the light particles around all of that. Mm-hmm. And the creativity that goes into the rebuilding and restructuring of all of that is such a beautifully aligned place to be during all of the chaos.
Yeah, we don't see it. See, that's the thing. We only see what we're told to see, the most part. And that isn't usually great stuff. It's designed to keep us out of our sovereignty and into a fear space, for whatever reason that is, but if we want to create something, we have to look at what's we're not seeing and what we want to see and what's underlying that may be hidden right now, but it won't stay hidden.
So beautiful. Darlene, where can people find you? And do you have anything special going on right now that you'd like to share with folks that may be listening?
So they could find me at soulunion.com. That explains a little bit more about me and what I do. It has my artwork up there. The podcast is also on that under media, I believe it is, and they can contact me there. Once a month on the third Sunday of the month, we do, the Evolves do, we go to the white space. It's from Eastern Standard Time. It's from 2 to 3:30. And we go to the white space and they work collectively and individually. Like people will get, instead of their names coming up, they will get numbers. And so the Evolves in whatever subject matter that they're talking about, they usually, and this has been happening for the last couple of years. We've been doing this for 6 years, but the last couple of years they had numbers for people. And so if they're working on the dynamics of betrayal or, the 5 basic wounds, they will go down, like number 1, it's number 4, number 3, they will go down and they will assign where the issues are lying within that person's individual life, right? But they use numbers. So it's both a collective that they work with us collectively, and a lot of that times is once we are worked with, then there's a ripple effect that they tell you to send that out so that it's not just contained within this group. And then they work individually with the numbers. So those are the 2 things. Eventually I will be doing a Zoom 3-part workshop that will probably be in the spring. And I'll just put that up on, and Cosmic Travelers is the group on Facebook.
Wonderful. I'll put links to all of that below for anybody that's curious about it. And Darlene, I really appreciate you being here today. And I would love to have you back because there are so many things that we didn't even get to.
Well, I would love to come back. You're very engaging.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very
All
much.
right, my dear.
Have a
Bye-bye,
wonderful
everyone.
time. Bye. Bye.